The industry assumes scale requires compromise. Stihl proves that focus can scale without dilution. The company built its position by breaking these rules consistently. It limited access to increase value. It reduced channels to strengthen relationships. It avoided platforms to preserve identity. That is why Stihl continues to win. It is not the most visible brand. It is not the most accessible. It is not the cheapest, but it is one of the most controlled, the most trusted, and the most resilient. In a market defined by openness, it chose discipline. In a system built on convenience, it built commitment. And in doing so, it turned limitation into advantage, distribution into strategy, and a refusal into a defining strength. That strength becomes even more visible when examined through the lens of product lifecycle. Most tool companies design for replacement cycles. Tools wear out, newer models arrive, and customers upgrade. This creates recurring revenue, but it also shifts the relationship toward consumption. Stihl approached this differently. Its machines are engineered for longevity, not turnover. Many professional users operate the same chainsaw for years, sometimes decades, with proper maintenance. This is where the dealer network reveals its second function. It is not just a sales channel. It is a maintenance infrastructure. Carburetors are adjusted, chains are sharpened, engines are repaired instead of replaced. The product does not exit the ecosystem after purchase. It remains within it. This extends lifetime value beyond the initial sale and reinforces the perception that Stihl tools are investments, not consumables. Competitors that rely heavily on big box distribution rarely maintain this level of post-sale integration. A broken tool is often replaced, not repaired. The transaction ends at the register. Over time, this creates a different kind of customer behavior. Loyalty becomes conditional. Brand switching becomes easier. Price retains importance. Stihl insulated itself from that cycle. There is also a geographic dimension to this strategy. In rural and forestry-heavy regions, where Stihl built much of its early dominance, proximity to knowledgeable dealers matters more than online convenience. A logger in a remote area does not prioritize 2-day shipping over immediate repair. Downtime costs money. Reliability and service accessibility matter more than marginal price differences. Stihl aligned its distribution with the realities of its core users. This alignment is not accidental. It reflects a deeper understanding of who the product is actually for. Many brands attempt to serve both professionals and casual consumers equally, often compromising for one to reach the other. Stihl remained anchored in professional use cases even as it expanded into consumer markets. The tools are designed from the top down, not the bottom up. That decision affects everything from material selection to pricing structure. It also affects brand perception. Among professionals, Stihl is not just a manufacturer, it is a standard. That reputation is difficult to replicate because it is built through consistent field performance, not marketing campaigns. Marketing, in fact, plays a different role in Stihl's strategy. The company does not rely heavily on mass advertising compared to competitors. Its visibility comes through presence in the field, word of mouth among professionals, and the physical visibility of its distinctive orange equipment. This is organic brand reinforcement. It grows through usage, not exposure. Contrast this with brands that depend on large-scale promotional campaigns to maintain awareness. Those brands must continuously invest in visibility to sustain demand. Stihl's demand is partially self-sustaining because it is embedded in professional ecosystems. A new worker entering the field encounters the brand through peers, not ads. The ownership structure reinforces this long-term thinking. As a privately held company, Stihl is not accountable to public shareholders demanding quarterly growth. It can prioritize stability, brand integrity, and strategic consistency over short-term expansion. Decisions like refusing Amazon become possible because they are evaluated over decades, not quarters. Public competitors often face different pressures. Revenue targets, market expectations, and investor sentiment can drive decisions toward broader distribution and faster scaling. These decisions are not inherently flawed, but they create trade-offs. Control is often the first to be sacrificed. Stihl's refusal to make that trade-off defines its position in the market. However, this strategy is not without risk. The continued rise of e-commerce represents a structural shift in consumer behavior. Younger buyers, including new entrants into trades, are accustomed to researching and purchasing online. The expectation of digital access is increasing. Completely resisting this shift could eventually create friction. Stihl's response has been measured rather than reactive. It has expanded its digital presence without abandoning its core principles. Customers can research products online, locate dealers, and in some regions, initiate purchases that are fulfilled through authorized partners. The transaction remains connected to the dealer network, even if the discovery process is digital. This approach preserves the integrity of the model while acknowledging changing habits. It is not a rejection of technology. It is a controlled integration of it. The long-term question is whether this balance can be maintained as digital platforms continue to evolve. If Amazon or similar platforms become dominant gateways for product discovery, the pressure to participate will increase. At that point, the decision will not be about convenience. It will be about visibility and relevance. So far, Stihl has managed to maintain both without direct participation. That outcome highlights the core principle underlying its entire strategy. Control over how the product is experienced matters more than how widely it is distributed. Every major decision, from early product design to modern distribution, reflects this principle. It also explains why the company's growth has been steady rather than explosive. Stihl does not optimize for rapid expansion, it optimizes for durable positioning. This results in fewer dramatic spikes, but also fewer collapses. Company avoids the volatility that often accompanies aggressive scaling strategies. In a broader business context, Stihl represents a countermodel to platform dependency. Many modern companies build their growth on top of platforms they do not control, whether retail marketplaces, social media, or third-party distribution networks. This accelerates reach, but introduces dependency. Changes in platform rules, algorithms, or economics can directly impact the business. Stihl avoided that dependency by building its own controlled network. It owns the relationship with its dealers. It defines the terms of distribution. It maintains consistency across markets. This independence is difficult to achieve once a company has already committed to external platforms. That is why Stihl's decision appears more radical today than it did decades ago. The industry moved toward openness. Stihl stayed with control. As the gap widened, the contrast became more visible. The result is a company that operates on a different set of assumptions. Success is not measured solely by how many units are sold, but by how those units are sold, supported, and retained within a system. Growth is not just expansion, but reinforcement. This brings the story back to the original contradiction. Refusing Amazon looks like a limitation in a world built on accessibility. In practice, it is a filter. It removes certain types of transactions while strengthening others. It narrows the funnel, but deepens the relationship. Most companies widen the funnel and accept weaker connections. Stihl chose the opposite path. And that choice continues to define its position, its resilience, and its ability to win in an industry where convenience is easy to copy, but control is not. Control, however, is only valuable if it translates into sustained advantage. In Stihl's case, that advantage is visible not just in revenue, but in consistency. Across decades of industry shifts, economic cycles, and technological changes, the company has avoided the sharp declines that have affected many competitors. It has not needed reinvention. Required dramatic restructuring. Its identity has remained intact. This consistency creates a compounding effect. Each generation of users inherits the reputation built by the previous one. A contractor who trusted Stihl 20 years ago influences the decisions of younger workers entering the field today. The brand is transmitted through experience, not persuasion. That transmission is slower than mass marketing, but it is significantly more durable. There is also a psychological dimension to this model. When a product is not universally available, it gains a different kind of value. It feels deliberate. It feels chosen rather than encountered. Walking into a dealership, speaking with someone who understands the equipment, and leaving with a tool that is set up and supported creates a sense of commitment. That commitment reinforces usage, care, and ultimately satisfaction. In contrast, frictionless purchasing often leads to frictionless replacement. When acquisition is easy, attachment is weaker. When attachment is weaker, loyalty declines. Stihl's system introduces friction at the point of purchase, but removes friction over the lifetime of the product. This is an inversion of the dominant model. That inversion is difficult to replicate because it requires alignment across the entire business. Product design must support repairability. Distribution must support service. Pricing must support dealer margins. Brand positioning must support patience. A single inconsistency weakens the system. Stihl's strength comes from maintaining that alignment over time. The broader implication extends beyond tools. It challenges a core assumption of modern business, that maximum accessibility is always optimal. Stihl demonstrates that selective accessibility, when paired with high-value experience, can produce stronger long-term outcomes. It suggests that control is not the enemy of growth but a different path to it. This does not mean the strategy is universally applicable. It depends on product type, customer behavior, and market structure. But within its domain, Stihl has proven that an alternative model can not only survive, but dominate. The company did not win by being everywhere. It won by being deliberate. It did not win by reducing friction at every step. It won by placing friction where it creates value and removing it where it creates cost. It did not win by following the industry. It won by defining its own constraints and operating within them with discipline. In the end, the refusal to sell on Amazon is not the story. It is the visible outcome of a deeper philosophy. A philosophy built on control, consistency, and long-term thinking. A philosophy that prioritizes relationships over transactions, systems over scale, and durability over speed. Most companies expand until they lose control. Stihl restricted itself and kept it. Most companies chase convenience and accept commoditization. Stihl limited convenience and built distinction. Most companies adapt to the market as it evolves. Stihl shaped its own version of the market and stayed within it. That is why it continues to win. Not because it ignored change, but because it chose which changes to accept. Not because it avoided growth, but because it defined how growth would occur. Not because it resisted the system, but because it built one of its own. And in a world where everything is available everywhere, Stihl built power by deciding exactly where it would not be. In an industry defined by scale, Stihl chose restriction. While competitors flooded big box retailers and optimized for volume, Stihl built a global empire by deliberately limiting where its products could be sold. No Amazon, no mass online distribution, no race to the bottom. The result is a privately held company generating billions in annual revenue, with margins and loyalty that most public tool brands cannot replicate. The modern tool industry runs on accessibility. Walk into any Home Depot, click through Amazon, or scroll a contractor supply site, and nearly every major brand is available instantly. Price competition is constant, distribution is wide, convenience is the strategy. Stihl rejected that entire model. Instead, it built a controlled dealer network, prioritizing service, training, and long-term relationships over reach. The question is not why Stihl avoided Amazon. The question is how that decision became its greatest advantage. The story begins in 1926, in Stuttgart, Germany. Andreas Stihl was an engineer working in a country still recovering from the economic devastation of World War I. Industrial rebuilding was slow. Labor was scarce. Forestry work, essential to both heating and construction, remained brutally inefficient. Trees were felled manually. Processing timber required teams of men and hours of labor. Stihl saw a mechanical problem waiting for a solution. His first invention was not elegant. It was a large electrically powered chainsaw weighing over 100 pounds. It required 2 operators. It was loud, heavy, and difficult to transport. But it worked. It reduced the labor required to cut timber and introduced the core idea that would define the company: productivity through engineering. By 1929, Stihl introduced the first gasoline-powered chainsaw, making the tool portable and far more practical in the field. The industry norm at the time was incremental improvement. Companies refined existing tools. They did not reinvent workflows. Stihl did. It did not just make tools better, it changed how work was done. That distinction created early demand, but it did not guarantee survival. The 1930s and 1940s brought instability. Economic depression hit Europe hard. Then came World War II. German manufacturing was redirected toward wartime production. Factories were damaged. Supply chains collapsed. Like many industrial companies in Germany, Stihl faced existential pressure. After the war, the company was left operating in a devastated economy, under strict regulations, with limited access to international markets. Survival was not assured. Many manufacturers failed during this period, others were absorbed or disappeared entirely. Stihl remained small, constrained, and vulnerable. The recovery required more than rebuilding production. It required redefining the company's role in a new global market. The turning point came through product evolution and strategic focus. In 1950, Stihl introduced the BL chainsaw, significantly lighter and more efficient than earlier models. By 1959, the company launched the Contra, the first truly one-man chainsaw. This was not a minor upgrade. It fundamentally changed forestry work. Tasks that previously required teams could now be handled by a single operator. Productivity increased dramatically. Labor requirements dropped. Adoption accelerated. At the same time, competitors expanded horizontally. They diversified into multiple tool categories, chasing broader market share. Stihl moved in the opposite direction. It focused intensely on outdoor power equipment, particularly chainsaws. Depth over breadth, specialization over diversification. This focus allowed the company to refine performance, durability, and ergonomics at a level generalist competitors could not match. But product excellence alone does not explain Stihl's position today. The defining decision came in how those products were sold. By the 1970s and 1980s, the global tool market was shifting toward mass retail. Large chains offered volume, visibility, and rapid expansion. Brands that secured shelf space gained access to millions of customers. The trade-off was control. Retailers dictated pricing pressure, merchandising, and customer interaction. The relationship between manufacturer and end user weakened. Stihl rejected that model. Instead, it built an exclusive dealer network. Independent authorized dealers became the only official sales channel. These were not passive retailers. They were trained partners. They assembled products, provided maintenance, educated customers, and handled repairs. Every purchase came with service. Every customer interaction reinforced the brand. On the surface, this looked like a limitation. Fewer locations, less visibility, slower growth. In reality, it created a controlled ecosystem. Consider a contractor walking into a Stihl dealership. The experience is different from a big box store. The tools are not stacked anonymously on shelves. They are presented, explained, and often demonstrated. The dealer understands the product and the application. The customer leaves not just with a tool, but with knowledge and support. That interaction builds trust. Trust builds loyalty. Loyalty sustains pricing power. Meanwhile, competitors optimized for distribution efficiency. Products were shipped in high volume, displayed with minimal support, and sold primarily on price and brand recognition. The transaction was quick. The relationship was shallow. Over time, this created a race to the bottom in certain segments of the market. Stihl avoided that race entirely. The refusal to sell on Amazon is a continuation of that philosophy. Amazon represents ultimate accessibility, infinite shelf space, instant comparison, algorithm-driven pricing. For many brands it is essential. For Stihl, it is incompatible with control. Selling on Amazon would remove the dealer. It would eliminate the service layer. It would reduce the product to a listing among competitors, competing primarily on price and reviews. It would shift the brand from relationship-driven to transaction-driven. Stihl chose to preserve the former. This decision carries costs. Limited online availability reduces impulse purchases. It restricts exposure to casual buyers. It slows penetration into certain markets. But it also protects margins, reinforces brand positioning, and ensures consistent customer experience. The contrast becomes clear when examining competitor outcomes. Many major tool brands embraced mass retail and online distribution. They achieved scale. They increased volume, but they also faced pricing pressure, commoditization, and reduced differentiation. Some responded by introducing multiple product tiers, diluting brand identity in the process. Stihl maintained a narrower, more controlled product range. It emphasized durability, serviceability, and professional-grade performance. It did not chase the lowest price point. It did not flood the market with variations. It built a reputation that aligned with its distribution model. Today, Stihl operates in over 160 countries. It employs tens of thousands of people globally. Annual revenue exceeds several billion euros. It remains privately owned, allowing long-term strategic decisions without the pressure of quarterly earnings expectations. This ownership structure reinforces its ability to reject trends that conflict with its core model. The modern landscape continues to evolve. E-commerce grows, consumer expectations shift toward convenience, competitors expand direct-to-consumer channels. Despite this, Stihl's dealer network remains central. The company has adapted selectively, integrating digital tools to support dealers rather than replace them. Online research leads to in-store purchase. Digital complements physical, but does not override it. This hybrid approach preserves the advantages of control while acknowledging changing behavior. It maintains the integrity of the system. At its core, Stihl's strategy is a rejection of default assumptions. The industry assumes more distribution equals more success. Stihl demonstrates that controlled distribution can create stronger outcomes. The industry assumes convenience drives loyalty. Stihl shows that service and expertise can be more powerful.